Now, the WSAV News 3 on Your Side special. Commitment to coverage, WSAV's Murrow Legacy, commemorating a decade of excellence in journalism.
I'm Trish Williford. Welcome to this special presentation, Commitment to Coverage, WSAV's Edward R. Murrow Legacy. Over the next hour, we'll celebrate outstanding journalism and take a closer look at the unprecedented achievement by WSAV News 3. 10 years, 44 regional and 2 national Edward R. Murrow Awards, ranging from TV writing to investigation to social media to the coveted Overall Excellence Award. But first, some context. You've probably heard of him, but who was Edward R. Murrow and why is he considered the epitome of excellence in journalism? Cheryl Sutton introduces you to the man and explains his legacy.
This is London. At the moment, everything is quiet.
Fearless, driven, influential.
The line between investigating and persecuting is a very fine one, and the junior senator from Wisconsin has stepped over it repeatedly.
Edward R. Murrow was a man whose words enthralled a generation.
The Atomic Energy Commission has just announced the completion of successful experiments in what it calls contributing to the development of thermonuclear weapons.
Now, welcome to one of the most glorious nights of the year in journalism.
Dan Shelley is Executive Director of the Radio and Television Digital News Association, the organization that keeps Murrow's legacy alive every year by honoring local and national journalists with Edward R. Murrow Awards.
Edward R. Murrow was the father of broadcast journalism, as he's colloquially known today. He started as Director of Public Affairs for CBS back in the 1930s. He gained notoriety during his rooftop blitzkrieg coverage in World War II in London. The standards and the principles that he established all those years ago still today reflect the highest standards of broadcast and now digital journalism. And so it's very special to win an Edward R. Murrow Award simply because of its namesake.
And over the past decade, few stations have been honored with more Edward R. Murrow Awards than WSAV.
It's not only some confirmation that maybe you're doing it right for people, but that over time you are consistent in that quality.
News Director Kevin Brennan has been the leader of WSAV's newsroom since 2000. During that time, he and his team have received 44 regional Murrows, including an impressive 7 for overall excellence.
Overall excellence means just what it implies, that you are the best of the best. An overall excellence winner has demonstrated an outstanding fulfillment of the station obligation to keep the public informed and to create a more informed society.
Let's tell people where they can get those decals.
We are lucky enough to have a number of veterans here who have been doing this for a long time. They've invested in this community, South Carolina and Georgia, and they know the players, they know the issues, and I truly believe they know a great deal about what the viewers in this area not only want but need.
And it's that local knowledge that translates into stories that matter, what Shelley considers superior journalism.
To win an Edward R. Murrow Award means that you are the best in your community at serving that community. You have a dedicated commitment and demonstrated commitment to public service and to keeping people informed, to holding the powerful accountable, to exposing problems in your communities, and many times as Murrow winners, the problems you expose lead to tangible, positive solutions.
Of all the stories that have earned Edward R. Murrow Awards for WSAV, none are more powerful and memorable than tales of the local struggles of the Civil Rights era, brought to life by News 3's Kim Gusby. Earning 5 Edward R. Murrow Awards for documentary, here's a taste of WSAV's Black History journey.
It's a story that warrants national attention, but until recently has remained untold. A story Dr. Shirley Green Reese has kept inside for more than 52 years.
And this is where we stayed for 2 months.
Reese was one of 15 girls thrown into prison during the summer of 1963. She was only 14 years old, the others ranging in age from 12 to 15.
We didn't know each other during the time we was here. We was from different parts of the city.
Their crime? They marched to protest a segregated movie theater in Americus, a tiny town just north of Albany.
Honey, they arrested all of us. And I got in too. Nobody ran, and that was the beginning of our life.
Though they were never charged, the girls were arrested and transported to Dawson, some 30 miles away.
Early the next morning, they took these young girls, including myself, and put us in a paddy wagon and brought us to this site right here, which is another 25 miles away from our home.
For 2.5 months, they were held captive in this old stockade in Leesburg.
We was put into this place with no beds, broken glasses, dirty place, no commode, no shower, anything. Just a big, dirty place. And we had no food for weeks.
And no connection to the outside world. How did that make you feel?
Deserted. Deserted from our city. And the worst part about it, we was children. And another part about it, we was young girls, black girls, who was trying to make a difference, who was trying to support the mission of Martin Luther King. Because we wanted equality. You know, we got tired of going in the back doors. We got tired of not being served. We got tired of going, you know, we wanted to go to the front door because we wanted equal rights. We wanted justice.
But justice was slow going. Here, they would remain until mid-September. Their release, not because of public outcry, protest, or policy, but because of a picture.
And there was no NAACP representative who came to these doors. There was no local officials, political officials. They did not come here. The only persons we saw down at this stockade the entire time was Danny Lyon and our parents.
Danny Lyon was a movement photographer for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, when he heard rumors about the jailed girls.
They would send him out to different parts of Georgia to take pictures of what was going on in Albany, Georgia, because it was just as bad there. So they found somehow somebody told them about the girls that were sleeping on filthy whole floors or something in Leesburg, Georgia. And they sent Danny Lyons to Leesburg, Georgia to find us.
His shocking images would lead to their release.
After taking the pictures, Danny Lyons indicated to me that he took the pictures back to Atlanta, to a bathroom where they had a SNCC office in Atlanta with John Lewis and those, and he developed those pictures right there. After developing those pictures, he sent them to Harrison Williams. He was a United States senator who was very connected with the civil rights movement. He sent those pictures to him in Washington, D.C. He presented those pictures to whatever Congress meeting he was in, and they sent an order down to Leesburg, Georgia to release those girls. That's the only way we got out.
They returned to school and to life without a word of where they'd been. Too painful to relive, many took the experience to their grave.
The stockade women are something else, aren't they?
But in April of 2015, Dr. Reese and the 8 other survivors spoke publicly for the first time during a commemorative program in Americus, with hopes of bringing closure, peace, and perhaps the possibility that their legacy will long be remembered.
We're not hostile. We're just trying to tell a story that needs to be told that was hidden 53 years ago.
There are hundreds, if not thousands, of local stories still to be told, and WSAV will be there to tell them. Edward R. Murrow would be proud. When we come back, thunder, lightning, and the determination to run head-on into the world's biggest storms. It's hurricane season when Commitment to Coverage, WSAV's Murrow Legacy, returns.
Welcome back to Commitment to Coverage, WSAV's Murrow Legacy.
Murrow thought weather coverage was just as important as the news. It had to be right, it had to be correct, and the highest ethical standard had to go into presenting that coverage.
And in 2016, WSAV lived up to that standard when we were honored with 2 Edward R. Murrow Awards for coverage of Hurricane Matthew. Welcome back. When hurricanes threaten, all eyes focus on the news. Last year, when Irma struck, it was all hands on deck again, presenting superior team coverage across the region. Here's a look back.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage tracking Hurricane Irma.
Good morning to you from Effingham County, where right now more than 3,100 customers are without power. And that is absolutely no surprise to me, because this is a major and severe wind and rain event. And just take a look behind me. We are live right outside the Effingham County Sheriff's Office. In fact, we're now told Effingham County has sustained winds of 40 miles per hour. So all emergency operations have now stopped for the safety, of course, of our first responders.
We have more than 20,000 customers, well over that, without power right now. That also means that you're not going to have working stoplights. The road conditions are just simply not suited to be driven on. Also, our Beaufort Police Department, they're not responding to calls right now. Neither is Hilton Head Island Fire and Rescue, neither is Hardyville. So you want to certainly keep that in mind. Also, don't forget, so far right now, the McTier Bridge is closed.
This is the area that is under the tornado warning, so it is just to the north of Beaufort, so right along the county, over the water, and into parts of Colleton County. And this is an area right now that is just getting drenched with really heavy rain.
We are out here at Coligny Beach. Right now, we are just about 30 minutes away from high tide, but as you can see, the waves are already very high. The water has come all the way up to the pier. This is right here, the dunes on Coligny Beach, and the waves are washing all the way up. And we still have just about 30 minutes until high tide.
We're taking a live picture from our Dozier Law Cam right now. You see it's windy out there right now. The camera is shaking. That is the Talmadge Bridge, which is of course closed until further notice.
I'm over at Hudson's here as Stassi pulls the camera up so you can see. She was showing you the water down there, because that's exactly what we are now surrounded by at Hudson's. Famous restaurant, obviously, all these docks and area right on the water. This entire area flooded before, and already as high tide is coming in, it is significantly flooded again. We were expecting to be able to go down to the concrete area and the dock over there. We can't even reach that area. And if you keep going with me, as Stassi's going to follow me this way, you're also going to see that obviously damage to the dock over here. All the docks on the other side were the ones that actually got destroyed during Matthew. Now more damage to this dock, and this entire area, which is usually a parking lot, is now instead a lake.
So this whole walkway has now filled in with water, and when we came about half an hour ago, it was not yet filled. It looks like it might be subsiding a little bit. It's hard to tell, but again, this whole walkway area is filled with water. Since we were here just about half an hour ago. This again is what officials warned everybody about. They said we could have this flash flooding and some kind of an issue because of surge and high tide. And we really have been pounded with rain here in the last half an hour.
Even though the tide gauge data reflected that we got less water than Matthew, it is apparent that we actually got a significant worse effect from Irma than we did from Matthew. Highway 80 is shut down in both directions. It is going to remain shut down based on the conversation I just had with the director of SEMA, Dennis Jones, until the Department of Transportation can inspect the bridges.
Look at the mailbox. If I was to walk to that mailbox and stand there, that water would come at least to my thighs. It's really, really high.
We are now on Whitmarsh Island, and what you're looking at, what you're getting ready to look at, is Richardson Creek. Now we're slowly moving forward for you. Can't move forward too much, but as you can see, this is Richardson Creek that has spilled over onto Juanita Street here on Whitmarsh Island.
Butterbean Beach is closed at this hour due to rising waters on the Skidaway River. You can see the water level on the high water marker.
I want to show you the video out at Bacon Park Golf Course. The entrance is blocked. A creek that runs through it has actually overflown and has put a whole bunch of new water hazards on the course.
As those outer bands of Tropical Storm Irma continue to move through the low country, we're beginning to see exactly what has become of this storm. And something that we're beginning to see is here is a tree is down on top of a power line. This is here at Pinckney Colony Road here in Bluffton.
The broad picture this afternoon, this is the radar. Again, as you know, the widespread rain has shifted well to our north and west.
But SEMA said a short time ago that evacuees are welcome back into areas of the county, including the islands areas, except for Tybee. Tybee is off limits because of this tide situation, and Highway 80, may not be passable at certain times.
And certainly we will continue to bring you information as it becomes available.
We never know when the next big one will hit, but we're always planning for severe weather, and you can too. Download our free WSAV News and weather apps and be ready when the power goes out.
Edward R. Murrow is the gold standard and was the gold standard when it comes to investigative reporting. His exposure of Senator Joseph McCarthy in 1954 led to not only McCarthy's downfall, but ushered in an entire new era of investigative journalism by broadcasters.
An era that continues on News 3 next. Accusations, twists, and turns. WSAV investigates when commitment to coverage. WSAV's Murrow legacy returns.
Welcome back to Commitment to Coverage, WSAV's Murrow legacy.
An award-worthy investigation is one that actually has an impact on the community and on the audience. Often, that impact is very positive, and those investigative reports serve as catalysts for positive change.
Investigation is one of the pillars of journalism. It's been a source of great pride for WSAV to have been honored with 3 Edward R. Murrow Awards for investigative reporting since 2013, tackling forced insurance bundling, uncovering inappropriate congressional gifts, and exposing mismanagement of the county jail. Sometimes these investigations aren't popular, but ignoring the little guy isn't what makes us on your side. And when we were approached to follow up on claims of excessive force by local police, we didn't turn away.
Was it a justified arrest or a case of excessive force by a Chatham County Sheriff's deputy? A new lawsuit claims that he went too far. Now you have a chance to watch some of the video and decide for yourself. News 3's Andrew Davis taking a closer look for us tonight. So Andrew, this started with a traffic stop.
Yeah, very close. It's an active warrant that actually was dealt with on the road, but it really turned from there as you went along. Anthony Oliver had a warrant out for his arrest connected to a missed payment on a drunk driving charge in another state. It was the state he was in after this stop that has him crying foul and wanting justice.
Hey, Anthony, that's going to be a police officer in that black truck. Can you pull over for us?
Okay, he tried to run me off the road.
That's the first thing you hear on body camera video recorded by Anthony Oliver himself. Oliver says investigator Frank Rollins earlier had hit his car, then pulled a gun on Oliver, never identifying himself. Oliver said he feared for his life, got back in the car, and kept driving.
They are U.S. Marshals. There is a warrant.
There is where the dispute and alleged excessive force begins.
He just hit the back of my car.
What?
He just hit me.
Oliver claims that Rollins and other deputies kicked him, breaking his teeth, and that he was jumped on by 8 to 10 officers, hitting him with fists and billy clubs while he was handcuffed.
Ah!
Oliver says he suffered an injury to his spine. He fractured his back, but no one gave him medical attention for 9 hours after his arrest. Oliver is suing Rollins and both Chatham County Sheriff John Wiltshire and Effingham County Sheriff Jimmy McDuffie for those injuries. He's also asking the FBI to investigate and a federal grand jury to indict all 3 for civil rights violations. The kicker, Oliver says, is the end of the video, which shows a deputy taking his camera and tossing it into the lake, thereby, according to him, attempting to destroy the evidence. Now, sheriffs say the video camera which shot that footage was retrieved by Chatham County inmates, later given back to Oliver. Oliver had been arrested twice before in Chatham County on similar contempt of court charges and already spent time in the Chatham County Jail.
Andrew kept digging, and just one day after our initial report, uncovered facts 3,000 miles away that changed the tenor of this WSAV investigation.
He claims he was badly beaten by a sheriff's deputy who was angry and used excessive force.
But News 3's Andrew Davis is digging deeper into a lawsuit against 2 different sheriff's offices and into the man who filed that suit. Andrew.
Well, behind me, some of the video we showed you yesterday from Anthony Oliver's own body camera. It's what happened on January 23rd, 2017. But that video only tells part of the story about Oliver. The man, I found out, has filed 27 different federal lawsuits in the last 8 years, and a man whose claims don't always add up.
Once I was down on the ground, a probation officer came and kicked me in the right rib cage, and then they jumped on top of me.
That was just some of the excessive force Anthony Oliver says he was subjected to by Chatham County sheriffs and caught on video back in January. He filed the lawsuit against both Effingham and Chatham County sheriffs and Chatham County investigator Frank Rollins, who he claims beat him. But I found out this isn't Anthony Allen Oliver's first time accusing officers of a crime. He's filed a total of 27 different federal lawsuits against the County of Los Angeles for false arrest, the City of Oceanside, California for violating his civil rights, the California Highway Patrol, the California Department of Corrections, as well as Men's Warehouse and T-Mobile.
How many federal lawsuits have you filed?
3.
By my count that I saw in there, I saw 20 or more.
No, sir.
Oliver claims he settled his 3 lawsuits not for cash, but for changes in policy in those departments. But what about those extreme injuries Oliver suffered in this beating?
You had an extreme abrasion on your face and that you had multiple broken teeth. I looked at the mugshot and you didn't look nearly as badly as you're claiming.
Not in the very beginning. I wasn't in a bad shape, but in time, the whole side of the face swelled up, and it's noted in the doctor's reports.
And Oliver also told me this about what happened to Frank Rollins after this incident.
The United States Marshal Service removed, as well as Sheriff Wiltshire, removed Rollins from the task force and sent him home for approximately a week and a half. And then at that time, once Internal Affairs had gotten involved, then they reassigned Rollins to the courthouse.
But News 3 talked to U.S. Marshals and Chatham County sheriffs who say Rollins was never suspended from the marshals or the sheriff's office and was only placed in the courthouse as part of his regular rotation. Now, Oliver in the lawsuit is asking for punitive and compensatory damages against both sheriff's office and for federal charges to be filed against Rollins and the other deputies on scene that day.
Investigation, the foundation on which On Your Side journalism is built.
On Your Side reporting is so critical in today's environment because there are so many scammers and cheaters and so much unknown about consumer reporting and business and financial reporting that Edward R. Murrow would hold the same high standards to that kind of journalism as every other kind.
When we come back, giving a voice to the voiceless. News 3 On Your Side gets results after months of red tape and runaround when commitment to coverage WSAV's Murrow legacy returns.
Welcome back to Commitment to Coverage, WSAV's Murrow Legacy.
By now, you've heard it, WSAV is on your side. Unique problems, unique solutions. In 2012, WSAV was honored with an Edward R. Murrow Award for series reporting, tracking the growing pollution problem on the Altamaha River. In doing so, we gave a voice to people living on the troubled waterway. It's our goal to serve, and to do that, we depend on you and give you the chance to reach out to us. We call it Voice of the Viewer. Last year, we were contacted by a woman still living with storm damage months after Hurricane Matthew.
As Hurricane Matthew hit, life has slowly returned to normal for most. But a Savannah woman still lives in fear of a storm-toppled tree falling on her home. She turned to News 3 for help, and Martin Staunton went to get answers. Martin?
Good evening to you, Tina, and to everyone at home watching. The burning question about this situation is how in the world is there still a storm-toppled tree tangled in a utility line in Savannah? Now, 2 months after our efforts and nearly 6 months after the storm, that tree remains, and kids are reportedly climbing it even though it could fall at any moment. This utility line is the only thing holding this tree back from falling. When it goes, it will hit Jacqueline Tanner's Southside home. The strain from the weight of the tree is written on the base of the closest utility pole. The line is owned by AT&T. The tree is on property owned by Crossroads Apartments, and the city of Savannah says this is a civil matter between two private citizens.
The city not helping me a little bit. When they went back there, looked like they on their side, it more on my side. So that's the way I feel. So none of them ain't working with me. I just want the tree branch off my property.
AT&T issued a statement saying that they're aware of the issue that Ms. Tanner has raised, and they've inspected that utility pole behind her home, and it is in both working condition and does not need to be replaced at this time. The threat posed by the tree doesn't just threaten Tanner's home, it also threatens this home, which is right next door. And you won't believe what happened when we went over the fence to try to talk with someone from Crossroads Apartments. This is the view of the tree from the opposite side of the fence from Tanner's backyard. We tried to reach out in a civilized manner before showing up at the apartments, but it was clear we were not welcome here. Are you locking the door? She just locked the door. Wow, she just locked the door. We called and they hung up here at the Crossroads apartment. We wanted to talk with them about the tree. The last time I was here, I'm not sure what that lady's name was. It's the very same lady. Follow me. She said she didn't see this tree that's on the fence right here. It's not quite 50 feet. And this is the backside of the tree where we're told that the children, some of the children from this apartment complex are playing on that tree. And as you can see, there are no barricades or anything to keep children off of it.
Well, this was not an easy fix. It took weeks of continued phone calls, knocking on doors and refusing to take no for an answer. But Martin proved WSAV means on your side.
A mess left over from Hurricane Matthew is finally getting cleaned up.
The storm cleared out more than 6 months ago, but one tree leaning on utility lines was only removed yesterday. News 3's Martin Staunton joins us live from the site on the south side with the update.
Good evening to you and to everyone watching. We are inside the Hunters Chase subdivision off Montgomery Crossroads in the backyard of Jacqueline Tanner's house. She spent months trying to get a tree removed that was looming over her home here on a utility line, and in late January, she turned to News 3 on your side for help. After nearly a half dozen reports on the situation, AT&T said they'd cut the branches back. That was 2 weeks ago. That work happened Monday, and now it's lifted the weight of worry off Tanner's shoulders, and her hurricane recovery can move forward.
I see it is back to the place it was. It feel much better. For safer for my family, and it's safer the kids in the apartments back of me. So that's the good thing.
It's been 6 months and 3 days since Hurricane Matthew laid the tree down, not only on the fence, but on the AT&T line here. And Tanner says now that it's gone, she feels a sense of relief.
I had a lot of fight to get it down, but it's got to the ending part, so thanks.
If you have a problem, we want to hear from you. 3 on your side is all about finding solutions. Well, you know, some stories can't be told in one day. When we come back, the night the sky lit up in Port Wentworth and the decade of recovery that followed, when commitment to coverage, WSAV's Murrow legacy continues.
Welcome back to Commitment to Coverage, WSAV's Murrow legacy.
We know your story doesn't end when our cameras leave. That's why we are dedicated to continuing coverage.
Continuing coverage demonstrates, as the name implies, a continuing commitment to keep the public informed about a particular story or series of related stories.
WSAV has won 5 Edward R. Murrow Awards for continuing coverage for heart-wrenching stories like the death of police officer Mark McPhail and the execution of convicted murderer Troy Davis, the controversial police-involved shooting of Charles Smith, and the case of Matthew Ajibade, who died in the Chatham County Jail. It was 2008 when the Dixie Crystal Sugar Refinery exploded. It was a night the community would never forget. A decade later, the healing continues.
The efforts of the EMTs, the firefighters, and the rest of the first responders here in the aftermath of the explosion was nothing short of a tall task. What happened in the hours and days after for them is very hard to forget 10 years later.
This was our 9/11, and
we just went to work.
It's one of the things that we pray never happens.
It's almost like a scene from a movie.
I need all fire units to the sugar refinery now.
Something that's hard to imagine, even in your wildest dreams.
It's a moment in your career you never ever will forget.
Flashing lights as far as the eye can see, headed to a burning heap of rubble that was once a towering small city staple on the banks of the Savannah River. These 4 men were all there, helping the victims.
I believe that we got all of the patients that we had that night, I believe, left the scene in an hour and 8 minutes.
We prioritized the patients to get them out, the most critical out first. We flew some out. We were taking them to the memorial to fly them to Augusta.
First responders spent days in and out of the refinery doing what they do until the job was done.
You had people going in and grabbing the ones they could get, and then it's more of an in-depth search when they're trying to locate somebody who may be in a void underneath that rubble.
Now an assistant chief at the Savannah Fire Department, William Handy, was there that night and the days that followed. He was part of a massive air and ground effort to save the injured, find the victims, and put out the flames.
Because we were there over a couple of days, and with the initial response and people we rotated in, it was upwards around 60, a little over 60 people.
As the fire burned on, a bigger problem emerged.
The fire in the silos remained burning continuously, and the efforts were really outside of everybody here that could handle that.
Silos at the refinery burned days after the explosion.
I was asked the question, have you ever extinguished a sugar fire before? And I said, no, but I'm fixing to.
A literal tall task. It begged for special help from almost 1,000 miles away. It took the efforts of a specialized company in Texas to get it done.
We're going to rig equipment that will allow us to do a direct application of foam and water.
After hours of work, the silos were under control.
They had a lot of things riding on the line. The community was upside down. It needed to be done, so we were going to make it happen.
The flames are long gone. The cleanup is done. Now 10 years later, those saving lives and fighting the flames still haven't forgotten.
You don't see the catastrophic events like this. They're rare. You learn from them, but they're not often, and we don't want to see them often. If I never see another one, it'll be a day too soon.
Most of the major fires here were put out shortly after the explosion. The fires inside the silos, though, those smoldered for days, a little more than a week. The same day those fires were put out is the same day the last person that was unaccounted for was found.
In the days following the explosion, the human stories began to surface, like the Butler family and their 2 sons. One they lost that day, and one who lives forever with the scars of that tragedy.
John called her and said that he was hurt, and he said that he was in a lot of pain.
It started with a phone call from Carrie and John Butler Sr.'s daughter-in-law, John Jr.'s wife.
He said, I love you, and the phone just went dead.
John wasn't alone in the Imperial Sugar Plant that day. He was with Jamie Butler, his brother.
Then next thing I just heard a big explosion, and I heard a big blast, and I seen the fire coming towards me. So the next thing I know, I just hit the ground. I guess the blast knocked me down. I got up, it was another explosion, so I fell back down.
Jamie remembered an area of the plant where the exit was supposed to be, but it was in flames, so they actually had to come through the fire to get out.
Jamie and John made it out, his parents rushing to the hospital to be with them.
So many ambulances there, they were lined up like train cars or something. They were just one behind the other. I knew that something terrible had happened. Very terrible. Something really went wrong.
Burned beyond recognition, doctors had to find a different way to identify Jamie.
Check his pockets. You'll find some water, dollar bills, because that's where he kept it, water up in his pocket.
The Augusta Burn Center, their only hope. Jamie in a medically induced coma for 3 months. John didn't make it.
It's a hurt, And it's a pain that just don't ever go away. I just talked to God and told him, I lost one. Please, please save my son. And he did.
Jamie was alive, burned over almost 50% of his body, woke up 3 months later in May of 2008.
He was talking and I was talking, and I don't think I gave him a chance to say 5 words. I was so excited.
He went home that same month, home to his kids, his family. His body and life changed that day, a day that still haunts him, according to his parents, even 10 years later.
One of the patrons saw that he was a burn victim and wanted to pay for his dinner. It upset him real bad. He said he didn't want nobody feeling sorry for him. Some days it makes you want to just say, well, I think we ought to quit doing this or quit doing that. But we press forward.
A decade gone, Jamie's still recovering, his parents still dealing with the loss, but never giving up hope.
I just want him to be happy and enjoy life because God kept him for a reason. It's going to take a lot of patience, a lot of time, and a lot of love trying to get through it.
These stories live on. If you want to see more about our continuing coverage of the sugar refinery disaster, go to WSAV.com. When we come back, celebrating the memory of the fallen with stunning imagery as Commitment to Coverage, WSAV's Murrow legacy continues. He began his career in radio. Edward R. Murrow used his words to paint a picture in the mind's eye of suffering and loss and honoring the heroes of war. Today, incredibly talented news photographers do the same with the camera. WSAV News 3 has earned 6 Murrow Awards for use of video.
A winning video is what makes the best use of the television medium to tell a story. It's compelling, it's creative, and it's something you just can't turn your eyes away from.
Here, we honor our local heroes at the Police Memorial.
1932, Robert B. Raper, Savannah Police Department.
Mark A. McPhail, Savannah Police Department. Doreen E. McCumber, Chatham County Police Department.
So far this year, 48 officers from across the country have been killed in the line of duty. 2 of them were from Georgia. We pray we lose no more. This beautiful memorial service gives us an opportunity to pay tribute to those who paid the ultimate price.
Hey! Hey! Fire! Hey! Hey! Fire! Hey! Hey! Fire! Team fire!
Last year, 143 heroes died in the line of duty in Chatham County. 53 throughout history have lost their lives serving others.
Remember, you're doing a job that many cannot do, many would not do, and many could not do. You protect each and every one of us. And for that, we are most grateful.
Just powerful. And some stories deserve that treatment. Here's another example of the camera's eye turning inanimate objects into works of art and bringing to life traditions long lost.
Christmas decorations year-round, shells and engraved waves. They're not the items you find in all cemeteries, but each is a part of history.
Our lives center around the water and the land, and then our church. Those are our 3 important things in our lives that we could depend on and did not have to get permission to participate in. So many of our family members are buried with those traditions in mind.
Constance Martin Witter has generations of family buried in Bluffton's Buck Island Cemetery, where most of the deceased are African American. Her grandfather, John Henry Martin, was the great-grandson of the city's first recorded freedman. Today, she's walking through this cemetery with preservation historian Carolyn Coppola.
These traditions you see repeated over and over in African American cemeteries across the country. And so this is the Bluffton flavor of that history.
Even the way the deceased are buried is tradition, each grave facing east so they can rise to meet their maker, and families buried together, although not in rows or columns.
It's important to be close to one another. So you're not going to be lined up in a straight row, because you always have to remember there's always going to be someone else coming.
Carolyn has created an exhibit preserving these traditions, but it's part of preserving something more. Markers on some of these oldest graves are fading away.
In freedom, markers started, but they may have been impermanent. Piece of wood, maybe plants.
Many older graves are marked with only a placard from a funeral home. Some are empty, or the moving letters are missing. Older concrete stones are slowly deteriorating. Some, like Louis Graham's, identifiable only because of the funeral home placard next to it. Others completely gone.
This is a lesson to learn about history and the importance of your history, whether you're alive or have gone on.
Honoring the fallen, bringing traditions to life, a picture worth 1,000 words. Welcome back. WSAV.com has been honored with 6 Edward R. Murrow Awards over the past decade and continues to lead the way with responsible reporting when the big story deserves expanded coverage. Here's an example.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for a special coverage of the March for Our Lives. Right now, we want to give you a live look at New York.
So we also want to show you the scene earlier today near Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida.
Right now, we want to join WSAV News 3's Low Country reporter Stassi Olmos.
Hello, Tina. I am at the halfway point right now of this march. It's going to be going through Madison Square. So we're just outside, and I ran into some girls who were walking down to the starting point at Wright Square.
Well, several events were organized in the Low Country as well.
The biggest of those happening in Bluffton this morning.
And that is where we find WSAV News 3's Andrew Davis. He's just back from that march.
Approximately 800 people showed up this morning. They wanted to make sure that everybody heard their voices loud and clear. The crowd at McCracken Middle School was very vocal today.
This Savannah edition of the March for Our Lives has tremendous participation. As you can hear, I'm going to let this breathe for a minute, if you will. They're vocal.
And as you can see, the internet provides limitless options for continuing news coverage. WSAV has been honored with an Edward R. Murrow Award for social media. Here's one fun story we were proud to feature on the WSAV Facebook page.
Hey everyone, I'm here grabbing a cup of coffee with my friend Ari, and in typical 2018 fashion, we're using this social time to be on our phones, browsing social media, not actually, conversing.
Major tornado outbreak likely this weekend?
Wait, seriously?
Yeah, this guy on Facebook is saying it's going to be the most dangerous event in the last 100 years.
No way.
Way.
Does this sound familiar? How many times in the era of social media have you seen posts about or heard rumors about imminent catastrophic weather events that have just never happened? Most of us have. There are a lot of great sources for news and weather that you can get right on your Facebook and Twitter feed for free. But we also know there's a lot of hype as well. Knowing how to spot that instantly will save you a lot of unnecessary worry and panic. Did you know that there are many forecasts that go viral on Facebook and Twitter that weren't actually written by or even endorsed by real meteorologists? One recent example happened back in January after our snowstorm. Right after it, there was a post that went viral on Facebook, and everyone was talking about how there was going to be this second winter storm that would happen in February, a month later. Now, at that same time, Storm Team 3 was forecasting a warm and dry end of the winter, but that forecast didn't quite generate the same buzz to make it go viral. Now, as it turned out, temperatures were in the 80s in February, and everyone was wondering what happened to winter. Always be suspicious of very specific forecasts beyond a week out. You may be surprised how easy it is to create a public Facebook page that appears credible. In just a few clicks, I could create a page, make up a title like Official Savannah Breaking Weather Alerts, and convince followers that hyped up forecasts are real, all to generate a large following and use that audience to drive traffic to a blog or website in order to make money. In the last several years, the number of Facebook pages like this has absolutely exploded. So always know who is behind the page. You don't want forecasts from someone not trained in meteorology the same way you wouldn't want medical advice from someone who never stepped foot in medical school. By the time you see a post show up in your feed, it could already be outdated, so always make sure to check the date and time of the post before sharing or retweeting. This is why relying on social media for time-sensitive, urgent weather alerts could actually be dangerous. Now, by keeping all of this in mind, the next time someone says to you,
"Wait, did you hear a Category 5 hurricane is coming in 3 months?"
you can be sure to tell them, "I think you need to download the WSAV weather app."
Journalistic principles, core beliefs, 44 awards in 10 years, including 7 for overall excellence. Edward R. Murrow set the standard. WSAV is honored to continue his legacy, serving you through our commitment to coverage. Thanks, and keep watching.